Hello everyone, welcome to your OOPS with C++ lab. So in this video I will be telling you how to run your programs and how to write your programs, how to compile your programs and how to run your program. So before that, first of all, let us understand how a program is executed, right? How a C or C++ program is executed. So when you write a program, first of all, whenever you write a program, it will be first pre-processed. After that, it will be compiled. Then it will be assembled. Then it will be linked, and then loaded. Right? So this is your preprocessor. This is your compiler. This is your assembler. This is your linker. This is your loader. Preprocessor. What will preprocessor do? It will remove any redundant text in the program. For example, suppose you have written comments in program, those will be removed, right? So your input will be .c file or .c++ and your output will be same .c file, your source code. Next comes compiler. Compiler will convert your code to assembly language. So it will take your source code and convert it into assembly language. Then come assembler. Assembler will convert your source assembly language code and it will get the output will be your machine code or your object code. What will linker do? Suppose there are several object files, your program is in several different files, so all those files will be pre-processed, compiled and assembled separately. Then these all files are part of the same program, so they will have to be merged. So linker, what will linker do? It will take several object files and it will merge them into one executable file. So your output will be one executable file. After that, what will loader do? Loader will simply load your program from hard disk into memory so that it can be run, right? So what happens is, today the modern day compiler will include all these steps. Your compiler will pre-process, compile, assemble and link it. Then it will be run by your operating system. The operating system will be your loader, right? So this is how a program is run. Okay, so now next is, what software do you need for running any program? Okay, let me show you a demo of this first. Suppose this is suppose what I am doing is, here this is your terminal. You will be running your programs in terminal, right? So when I compile this program, I have a code, this hello world, right? No, this is not hello world. Okay, let's change it. Okay, so this is your code for hello world, right? I have written this code. I am just showing you a demo, then later I will explain how is it run. So this is a code for printing hello world. Now when I compile this file, g++ hello world.cpp, now what happens? So there is no output. Why is there no output? Because what is happening here is, this in this step only the file is compiled, it is not run, right? So when you have seen here, your compiler will only produce this .exe file. It will not run it. So who will run your file? The file will be run by your operating system, right? So you have to, the output will be a.exe. Your output file name will be a.exe. You have to run this file. So this is your this command prompt is your operating system. So you have to tell it to run this file a.exe. Now the output is printed. Okay, so always remember that when you compile this file, there will be no output. So you have to run it, then your output will be shown, right? Okay, so now let us see what are the steps in what are the softwares required for writing a program. So the first software is for running any program. The first software is editor. What is editor? Editor is used for simply writing your code. For example, in Windows you have notepad. Okay, so in lab you will be using Linux. So these steps will be same, but your node editor will be different. Okay, but steps will be same. So in Windows you can use notepad. Everyone has notepad in their Windows. So this is a editor. You can write your code here, right? And in Linux you have gedit. So you can write your code in gedit. The second step, second software you need is compiler, right? So the compiler will convert your code to .exe executable file. Okay, so okay, so the in Linux the output, the machine code is in the executable file is in the form of .exe for Windows, and for Linux it is in the form of .out, right? So after compiling in Windows, in Linux, in Windows your output will be a.exe, and in Linux your output will be a.out. So you will have to run a.out in Linux. Okay, so when you do this in your lab, you have Linux. When you do this in your laptop, you have Windows. So you will have to do this, right? Okay, so these are the two softwares, editor and compiler, right? These are the two softwares that you need, and then you have to run it. Okay, so now let me show you how to run your program using terminal. Okay, there are two ways to run your program. First is using terminal, and second is using IDE, integrated development environment. Okay, first I will tell you about terminal. So running our programs with terminal is more challenging, it is more difficult, right? So but you will be following this step. Okay, so in lab also you will run your program in terminal. So let us see how to run your program. First of all, what you will do, so okay, so you will be doing this, suppose you are doing this at your home, so you will not have a compiler in your Windows, right? So now let us see which compiler should we use. So okay, so the compiler, the most popular compiler is GCC. What is GCC? GNU's compiler collection. Okay, what is GNU? GNU is an open source foundation, right? It develops several open source softwares. So how was GNU formed? So initially when Unix, so the first operating system, the first proper operating system was Unix, right? Unix. Unix and Linux are different. So the first operating system was Unix. When Unix was being developed, it was a proprietary system. Proprietary operating system. Proprietary means that you have to pay for this, right? It was not free. So one of the employee working in Unix, one of the engineers, software engineers working in Unix, he was very angry. Okay, so he wanted Unix to be free. So what he did, he resigned from his job and he created a foundation, GNU's not Unix. So the full form of GNU is this. GNU is not Unix. The full form of GNU is GNU is not Unix. So he wanted to take revenge on Unix, therefore he named it like this. Okay. So GNU is not Unix, and then he created his own, developed his own operating system. It was called Linux. So the difference between Unix and Linux is open source. It is free, but Unix is paid, right? And then later Windows and Mac OS came. Okay, so now they develop several more softwares. For example, GCC is one of the compiler that they develop. So the name of the C compiler, the name of the C compiler is GCC, and the name of your C++ compiler is G++. So these compilers you will use. Okay, and who makes this compiler? GNU make these compiler, right? And can you so there are some other compilers also. For example, you must have heard about Borland Turbo C compiler. Okay, Borland is the name of company and they makes a compiler Turbo C. So this is again proprietary compiler, right? This is paid version, and this is outdated, this is not used. Okay, so you don't find many variations of compiler because it has to be standard. There should be some standard, so you can't follow different standard of compiler, right? So GCC compiler is the most popular one, and again some Microsoft also have their own compiler, I think. So these are not used. This compiler you will always use. Okay, And the next is okay, so for Linux the name of compiler is GCC and G++ for C++. But for Windows what happens, these compiler won't work. Okay, these are compiler dependent, so they have to be modified, and for Windows they have developed the name of compiler is MinGW. It means minimalist GNU for Windows. Okay, so for Windows you will use MinGW compiler, and for Linux you will use GCC and G++ compiler, right? Okay, so what happens when you use Linux, these compilers are installed by default. Linux is very heavily used for programming, right? So Linux has all the programming software. It will have all the compiler, these compilers. Linux will also have Python by default. Python is also default in Linux by default, but in Windows you don't find these compilers by default, so you will have to install it. Okay, so now let me show you how to install this compiler on your Windows so you can run it on terminal. Okay, so what I am doing, so I will show you how to download it, how to install it. So please follow each steps carefully, and you can pause whenever you want. Okay, so the first step is uh, you have to go and you have to Google what. Okay, now in your you just search for OSD and MinGW, this one. Okay, search for OSD and MinGW. After that, when you open this, open what when you open this, okay, when you open this MinGW get setup, what will happen when you open MinGW get setup? Here this page will come. Okay, from here what you have to do, you have to download this file mingw get setup.exe. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to download it from this site only, right? Do not download it from any other site. So when you download this site, it will be about 9 KB, very small size. Okay, so I have already downloaded it. Let me show you. Okay, so this is here. So now double click it and then install and then continue. So what it is saying that it is already installed. I have already done it, so I will run it now. But in your system you have, it is not already installed, so it will install in your system, right? So after running it, this will come, you will see this. Okay, after running this you will see this. Now what you have to do is you have to, in your system this will not be green, all of these blocks will be white. So you have to select this one. You have to select MinGW32 base bin and MinGW32 GCC G++ bin. You have to select this. How you will select? You have to right click, you have to click and mark for installation. Suppose I am selecting this, mark for installation. So this way you have to select mark for installation. Okay, so please do this for both of these. Mark for installation, select it, mark for installation, select it, mark for installation, right? After that what you will do, you will go to here and you will select apply changes. Okay, please do it. Go to installation and apply changes, then it will be installed, right? So it will take some time to download and it will install. So when your installation is complete, what will happen is you will see a folder in your C drive. In your C drive there will be a folder MinGW, right? MinGW. Now open this folder. Now do this step only when your download is complete. Okay, so when you open this folder you have to go to bin, right? So inside this bin you can see that there are several compilers. Okay, Now if you open your terminal, so how do you open your terminal? Press Windows and R key, Windows plus R. Okay, your run command will open. So here you can type cmd and then press OK. So your Windows terminal will open. Now here if you try to run this compiler, so you have run, the name of compiler is MinGw, but it is run by this command, g++ command. Okay, so when you run this compiler, and you have to check how whether it is installed or not. Okay, so you have already installed it. Now you have to check whether it is installed or not. So when you do g++ space, after that space, and then hyphen version. Okay, so it will show you that the version is 9.20. Okay, but you must be getting this you must be getting command not found error, something like this. Why? Because you have installed it, but your system, your operating system doesn't know that it is where it is installed, right? So you must be getting error. So in this step, let me show you how to correct that error. Okay, so you have to tell your operating system where it is installed. So it is installed in bin folder. So you have to just select the properties and you have to copy this. Okay, so first go inside this bin folder and then right click on any file and then select properties. Okay, so your location is found here, right? You have to copy this location, MinGw bin. Copy this and you have to add it to the path. So when you add it to path, your operating system will know where it is installed. Right now your operating system doesn't know where it is installed. So how do you add it to path? Go to your PC, right click and properties. After that advanced system settings and then environment variables. Okay, so here you have a variable path, right? Sorry, you have to search it here in system variable. In system variable you have a variable path. Okay, you have to add it. In Windows 10 there will be a new button, add button. If you are using Windows 10, I am using Windows 8. So if you are using Windows 10 there will be something like add button, right? So you can add it. So for Windows 8 what you have to do, you have to edit it and at the last, okay, at the last what you have to do is you have to write semicolon. Let me show you on notepad. You have to write semicolon and then this folder you have to write it at the last. Okay, please don't forget this semicolon, otherwise there will be an error. Okay, so please paste this at this at the last of that path variable. Or if okay, so suppose you only have this, what you have to do is you have to press semicolon and then you have to press paste and then OK. Now your operating system will know that this your compiler is installed, and where it is installed you have already told it from the you have already specified using the path. Okay, now just try and run this command again, g++ space hyphen version. Okay, now you should be okay. You have to restart it, this terminal first. Close this terminal and then run it again. How will you run it? You have to press Windows plus R button and then type cmd and press enter. Okay, your terminal will open. Now try to run this again, g++ space hyphen version. So now it should show this one. Okay, now it should now your version should be shown. It means that your compiler is installed and you can use it now. Okay, okay, so now what I will do, I will show you how to write a code, hello world code, and how to run it on terminal. Okay, so now please follow with me very carefully. First of all you have to open your notepad. So you can open your notepad right? There will be a blank file, and then type this command, type this code, hash include IO stream, and then using namespace stt, and then int main, and then COUT. Okay, so what many of you do is you think that this is count. This is not count, this is C out, and then hello world. Okay, so please type this code. You can pause and you can type it. Okay, so I will move forward. After typing, what you have to do, you have to save it. Go to file, save, and save it on desktop. Go to desktop and write the name as hello world. Hello world dot cpp, right? Okay, there are two very important things to note. First of all, there should be no space in file name. Please don't write it as hello space world. This is wrong. Second, you must write .cpp. It should be .cpp. Don't forget .cpp. Okay, so save it in desktop. Now our file is saved. Now we have to run this file. We have to compile this and run this. So now open your terminal, type G++, and then your file name HELL. Okay, so now when you open your terminal, you are not in desktop, right? If you try to compile your file here, it will say that no such file or directory, because you are not in desktop. So first you have to, your terminal should go to desktop. Okay, so when you open your terminal, you write cd desktop, desktop. Okay, so same these steps you will do in your lab. In your lab also you have to perform these steps. You have to go to desktop. There you will use Linux operating system, and here we are using Windows operating system. So after going to desktop, you have to compile it. G++ hello world hello dot cpp. Okay. Okay, so now this file is compiled, but there is no output. Why? Because we have not run it. We have the compiler will only compile it. Compiler will not run it. Okay, so now I will run it using a.exe. So now the output is here. Okay, so understood. This is how you run your program using terminal. So now let us take your okay, let me explain this code now. Okay, so first of all is hash include iostream. This is your header file. You have used this in C also. So the difference here is you don't have to write h. In header file you have to write stdio.h, right? But in C++ you don't have to write h. Okay, then comes namespace std. Okay, so what is the namespace? Let me explain what is the namespace. Okay, so what happens is, a namespace means namespace is used to simply organize your code. Suppose this is your namespace. Suppose this is your std namespace. Okay, so inside this std namespace, all your header files, all your standard functions. For example, to print you have cout function. To take input you have cin function in C++. In C you have printf function, but in C++ you have cout function. In C you have scanf function, and in C++ you have cin function, right? So all of these functions are put inside standard std namespace. Now what will happen when you put it inside std namespace is that you can use these same names in some other namespace, right? So you can write cout here. You can use some other namespace, suppose my namespace. Okay, so namespace allows you to use the same name in two different allows you to that two different functions can have same name. Okay, so why is this? Because what happens is many times you use same name for, suppose you have to print. Okay, so what will be the name of your function? You have very limited names, right? You can write print, you can write display. Okay, so these names you will use, but you have to use, but suppose you have to write several different print functions. One print function is for string, one print function is for character, like this. So you have to write different names for print. You have to write print 1, print 2, print 3, like this. So it becomes very confusing, right? So what they have done is they have created this namespace. Now within two different namespace you can have same names. So for example, suppose this namespace is for string, right? So you can write print function here. You can use same name. Okay. So the only advantage of std is you can use same name. Print here you can use in this namespace, and print you can use in this namespace, right? So when you do, okay. Now suppose your cout is in std. Cout is in std namespace, and suppose you have another cout. You have created another namespace, my namespace. Inside that you have a cout function. Okay, so now in your code, suppose you are writing main and then you are writing cout. Okay, so now compiler will be confused. Which cout should I use? This cout or this cout? Okay, so how do you compile? Tell the compiler that you have to use this cout. So your one option is that you have to write the name std namespace. This is called scope resolution operator. Double semicolon means scope resolution operator, and std is the namespace. So if you write this std scope resolution operator cout, it will use this function. And if you write myns scope resolution operator and cout, it will use this cout, right? It will use this cout and it will use this cout. Okay, now what happens is, suppose cout function is very common. Cout function is very common, right? So suppose when you are writing main and you are using cout several times, cout, 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 cout. So every time you have to write std here, std, 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 right? So instead of writing this std, what you can do is you can use this line, using namespace std. Okay, so it means that when you write this, it means that after this every function will by default have std before it. Every function will be from std namespace, so you don't have to write this, right? So you must have seen that in the code we are not writing std scope resolution operator and cout. We are simply writing cout, because when you write this std, by default it will consider it as std cout, right? So this is the use of this statement, that all the functions after this are from std namespace, right? Okay, so now suppose you ask me, suppose if you ask me, what if I remove this one? Will there be any error? What do you think? Will there be any error? Let me show you. Okay, now let me compile it again. Okay, right? So there is an error. It is saying cout was not declared in this scope. It cannot find where is this cout. Okay, so you have to write it std cout. Okay, using namespace. So what I can do is I can write it as std and then this. Now if I compile it, there will be no error, right? So if I have to write this, or I can simply do it again using namespace std, and if I compile it, then there will be no error. Okay, so I was explaining this code. This is your header file, this is your namespace, after that int main. Okay, now please note that in C++ you can have void main, right? You can write void main, but in C++ it is a must that the return type of main is int. It can't be void main, right? And then this is cout. Cout is used to simply print anything. So if you write cout hello world, it will be printed. Suppose you want to take any input in C, what you have for output in C, you have printf function, and in C++ you have cout function, right? And then you have to write this one. Suppose you want to output two different things, then you have to again write this and int a. Let me show you. Suppose you have to write int a equals to 10. Now I want to print hello world, and then I want to print this a. So these are two different variables, right? These are two different objects. So you will have to write this between this. Okay, cout hello world, and then operator. This is output redirection operator, and then a. This is how you will print hello world and a. If you have to take input, suppose I am writing int n and then cn. Okay, so your input will be taken in this manner, cin and then n, right? In C you must have used scanf function, scanf n. Here you will use cin n. Okay, so for now let us delete it. Okay, now please note one thing, that whenever you make any change in your program, you must save your file. Okay, suppose suppose okay, suppose I am writing cout by world. Okay, now I have changed my code, but I have not saved this file. I am not saving it. I have not saved it yet. Now if I compile it, what will happen? It will compile. So so if I run it, what will be the output? Your output will not be by world. Your output is hello world. Why? Because I have not saved that file. So the old file was compiled. Okay. So I have to first save this file. After making any changes, you must not forget to save it. So I will go to file and save it. Now if I compile it, your output will be by world. G++, and then if I run it, by world, right? Suppose if I change it again, I am writing it go. Okay, now I am not saving it, and then again if I compile it, and if I run it, so your output is still by world because I have not saved it. So I have to save it first, save, and then I will have to compile it, and then the output is go. Alright, so don't forget this step. Okay. So next is, let us write a program to print numbers from 1 to 10. I want to print numbers from 1 to 10. So everything will be same using loops. I want to print numbers from 1 to 10 using loops. So I hope all of you know about loops and all of you know how to use loops. Int I, and then for int I equals to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. Okay, then I will write this inside cout I. This is how you will print output. Okay, so please don't put this in it in quotes. So if you do this, what will happen? It will print I. It will not print 1 2 3 4. It will print I. You want to print the value of I. You do not want to print I. Okay, so if you want to print I, then you will write it like this. If you want to print the value of I, then you don't write this codes, right? So now let me save it. So please everyone, you can copy this code, type this code in your notepad. Okay, so now I have saved this, and now let me run it, C++, and then compile. Okay, so your output is printed 0 1 2 3 4 5. So now it is on the same line. I want to print it on different line. So then I have to write after this int l. int l int l means end line. Okay, after every output it will print a new line. Okay, so now what will be the output? Your output will be in different lines, 0 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so your next code is now let us write a new code. You can create a new file, and then here I am writing a code to print the sum of 10 numbers. So I will write has include, and make it a habit to type your code every time. Do not copy paste. So when you type your code, then you will get more practice, right? Using namespace std, then int main, and then I have to print numbers of sum of 1 to 10, right? So I will take int I comma sum equals to 0. Then for I equals to 0, I less than 10, I plus 2. Okay, if you want to include 10 in the sum, then you have to write I equals to 10. Now sum equals to sum plus I, right? Okay, so what I am doing here is, let me explain it. So suppose you are running your loop for I is equals to 0 to 10, right? So what will be the value of I? The value of I will be 0, and then next time 1, and then next time 2, and then next time 3, right? So we have to take the sum of I, right? So what I am doing is, initially I am taking sum as 0. Your sum is 0, and then you are doing sum equals to sum plus I. Sum plus I, right? So what will happen is, whatever is the previous sum, I will be added to it. So suppose initially sum is 0 and I will be added to it 0. Now this is your sum. So in next time what will happen? Your sum is 0 plus 0 and I is 1. Okay. Next time what will happen? Sum is your 0 plus 0 plus 1 and the value of I is 2. So 2 will be added. Next time what will happen? Next time again your sum is 0 plus 0 plus 1 plus 2, and you are adding I to it. So I is 3, right? So next time you will add I is 4. Next time I will be 5. So this way your sum is getting computed. Okay. So you have to practice this type of code, then you will understand it better. So we are writing sum of I plus I. So finally we have to print this sum, then cout sum, then you have to save it. Okay, now what will happen is, I will have to save it. So I am saving it. Save. Again I will save it to desktop, and the file name will be sum.cpp. Please do not forget .cpp. Then save. Now I will compile this file, g++, and the file name is sum.cpp, and then I will run it. So the output is 55, right? Okay, so your next code is, you have to print the factorial of a number. Factorial. Okay, so to print the factorial you will do same steps, right? What is factorial? Suppose I am giving you n equals to 5, then what you have to do is, you have to first start with 1, and then you have to multiply 2, and then you have to multiply 3, and then you have to multiply 4, and then you have to multiply 5, right? So in sum what we were doing is we were adding it 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 dash 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 up to, right, 10. So we were doing sum plus I, sum equals to sum plus I. So for factorial what will we do is factorial equals to factorial into I, right? So for each time we have to multiply it with I, right? And another difference is here you have given the input value, right, n equals to 5. When you were using sum, what you were doing is you were writing the sum from 0 to 10, so the sum will be fixed. But now I am telling you the factorial of, I will be taking the input. I will be telling you that you have to write the factorial of 5, or I may say that you have to write the factorial of 7 or factorial of 10 and so on, right? So you will have to first take this input, right? And one more thing, that initially the value of sum was 0, right? The value of sum was 0, 0 plus, and then you will adding I to it, I 0 sum plus I, sum plus I, sum plus, right? But here the value of factorial initially should be 1, it should not be 0. If you write it 0, then your product will become 0, this completely will be 0, right? So your fact should be 1. Whenever you find any product, it should be 1. Whenever you find any sum, it should start with 0, right? Let us write the code. So this I variable is for loop, and instead of this sum I am writing, okay, let me create a new file and hash include iostream using namespace std and then int main and then what you will do, int I comma n comma fact. Okay, n is for input. You will ask the user that which number you want to find the factorial, right? So suppose you will have to take this input c in n. What this will do is it will take any input from keyboard and it will write it to n, right? Now we have to find factorial of n for I equals to 1, I less than equals to n, I plus plus, right? And then what you have to do, fact equals to fact into I, right? And then finally you will print the value of fact. Okay, and then you will save it, save desktop, and file name is fact.cpp. Save it. Now let us compile it. G++ fact.cpp and then a.exe. Okay, now here it is waiting for input. You have to write any number and it will calculate the factorial. Let us calculate the factorial of 5 is 120. Again if I run it, factorial of 3, you have to write 3. Okay, you have to write 3 and then press enter. Factorial of 3 is 6. Factorial of 0 is 1. Factorial of 1 is 1, right? So this is how you can run your programs using terminal. And so this is the first program in your C++ lab, finding the factorial of a number. Okay, now you have seen how to run your codes in terminal. Now this is very challenging, right? You have to write the code in editor, for example notepad or this. Then you have to write your code, you have to compile it, you have to run it, you have to save it. So it is very very challenging. Another option that you have is IDE. IDE means Integrated Development Environment. So what IDE do is, IDE will combine all these steps. So you can write, compile and run. So you can write, compile and run your code in one single software, which is called IDE. Right? So I will give you a demo. So there are several IDEs for C++. Let me give you some names. So the first is dev C++. Second is CodeBlocks. So IDE means any software which will combine all the three steps. You can write your code in IDE, you can compile your code, you can run your code. And you have VS Code, and you have finally this one, Eclipse. Okay, these are four different softwares. Which software should you use? So your preference always should be open source. Always use open source software, right? So for example, Windows is not open source, but Linux is open source. And you should always be able to use Windows and Linux. You should have dual boot. It means that you can run Windows and Linux both at the same. You can install both on your system, right? You can install Windows and Linux both on your system. So try to make your computer dual boot. You can search Google how to install Linux over Windows, right? You can do it. And okay, let us see some open source alternative. So for Windows, your open source alternative is Linux, right? For MS Office, Microsoft Office, your open source alternative is LibreOffice. Okay. So I use this one in my Windows, LibreOffice, right? Let me show you. This is LibreOffice. So here you can see that this is the LibreOffice Writer is similar to MS Word. LibreOffice Calc is similar to MS your Excel. Impress is your PowerPoint, right? And in this manner you can have open source alternative, right? And okay. So why I am telling you open source is it is always free, so you can always use it anywhere you want, right? Second thing is your so which of these are open source? Dev C is open source, CodeBlocks is open source, and Eclipse. VS Code is not open source, right? Microsoft is making VS Code, Visual Studio Code. This is made by Microsoft, and Microsoft is never free. Yes. So you can use it Visual Code, but there may be some restrictions for you. Okay, so always try to use open source. Second is your preference would be cross platform. Cross platform means you should be able to use these softwares on Windows, Linux, as well as Apple operating system, which is Mac OS. Okay, so most of the open source softwares are cross platform. You can use them on all of these, right? And the third preference would be features. What are the features provided and whether it is fast or not? Okay, so if there are more features, then it will not be fast. So if there are less features, then it will be fast. Okay, so Eclipse has a lot of features, right? It is a very heavy software. It is used in industry. Okay, so I suggest that you use CodeBlocks. It has good features. Dev C++, earlier Dev C++ was very popular, but now it has become outdated. Now they are not working on it very properly, and they are not developing it properly. So CodeBlocks you should use. Otherwise you can use VS Code also, no problem. Okay, so let me show you how to download and run CodeBlocks. Okay, so what happens, you have to do, you have to first search it go to Google and search CodeBlocks. After that you will click on downloads. So your this page will open. Okay, after that you will click on download the binary release. Don't download the source code, download binary release. This page will open. So here you have CodeBlocks for Windows, for Linux, for Mac OS, right? So you are using Windows, you have several options. So these are the 32-bit options, 32, 32, 32. So you must be using 64 bits. So these are the 64-bit options. Okay. Now there is several different options among these. You have one setup. Setup means that it will install your complete code block. Okay. It will give you complete setup. Second, you have non-admin. Suppose you are in someone else, suppose you are in lab, you do not have admin access, then you can't install it. So you can use this one, no admin. For this you will not require any admin access. Third is no setup. No setup means you can use it, it is a portable version. Means you can just download it and run it. You don't have to install it, right? Next is MinGw setup. So this is same as setup. This is an installer, and no setup means you can simply run it. You don't have to install it. MinGw means that it has a MinGw compiler, and it will have a GCC compiler. Okay, so GCC compiler is for both Linux as well as Windows, and MinGw compiler is for Windows, right? And MinGw no setup means that you don't have to install it, and it will be MinGw compiler. Okay, so I suggest that you use this one. You don't have to install it. So I have already shown you how to install the compiler, right? So but in this one, if you use this one, then what will happen is it will install it, right? And it will also install your compiler. If you use this one, it will not install. It will simply, you just have to download it and run. So you can run it from any site. You open this site and then you can download it. It is about 150 MB. Okay, I have already downloaded it. Let me show you. So if you go to download, there will be a zip file. You can extract it, right click and extract to folder name is. After that it will be extracted here. I have already extracted it. So now you have to open it. So see, this is the folder for your compiler. Okay, and this is your code blocks. Just run it, codeblocks.exe. So you don't have to install it, it will directly run. You just download it and run it. So it is loading, just wait for it to load. Okay, so CodeBlocks has started. Now let us run a code in this CodeBlock. So this is a CodeBlock software. This is an cross-platform IDE, open source cross-platform IDE, right? So now let us open the file that we have created in desktop. In desktop we have already created HelloWorld, right? HelloWorld.cpp, and we have created some we have created sum.cpp, and we have created fact. We have created a fact file, fact, right? So now let us open all these three files. So this is your hello world. Okay, so you can see that here these are color coded, right? It helps you in coding. In notepad there was no color coding, all of these were same, right? So this will help you in coding. And so how do you run it? You have to just press this button, build means compile. So when you press this button, it will compile here, build finished. Then you have to run it using this button. So your output will be shown here, and press any key to continue, right? Or you can just press this button, it will compile and directly run it at the same time. So it will run. Next one is your sum. Let us run this code, sum, and then it is run. Next is your fact. Let us run it. So now it will ask for input. Our input is 4. Press enter. Done. Now let us create a new file here. So how do you write a new program? Just press on this button, empty file, and write hash include IO stream. Okay. Then what you will write is int main and then cout by world and then write. Okay, so why there is no color coding in this one? See, here you can see that this is coming in green, this is in blue and black. There are different color coding, right? Why is there no color coding? Because it is not saved as a .cpp file, right? You have not saved it. So first you have to save it, file, save file, desktop, and then I will write it hello.cpp. Now you can see that everything is color coded, right? So this is how you create a new file and you have to save it. So again, let me tell you, new file, empty file, and then you write your code as include IO stream and int main. Okay, and then you can write int a is equals to 10 cout a, right? Now you will have to save it. Always remember to save the file, save, desktop, hello3 hello2.c. Now you can run it. Okay, okay. Now there is an error, cout was not declared in this scope. So why you are getting this error? Because it cannot find the cout. Cout is in std namespace. So I have not written std here. Using namespace std, right? Now let us try to compile and run it. Okay, now there is no error. Similarly here the error is there was an error. Okay, there was an error. Cout was not declared in this scope, right? Cout is in std namespace. So I can write using namespace std, or I can write here std scope resolution operator cout, right? Now let us run it. Okay, so the output is 10. This is run, right? So this is how you can run using both terminal, using your IDE, using CodeBlocks. Okay, now let me give you an advice. Whenever you write any code, you should always format it. Format it means, okay, so what many of you do, namespace std int main. Okay, after writing int main, you do not provide any space. You simply continue from here. Int a equals to 10, int a equals to 10, and then you write for loop for int I is equals to 10, I less than 15, I plus plus, right? And then again you continue from here, say out I. Okay, so now this becomes very difficult to understand. Let me save it first. hello3.cpp, right? So it becomes very difficult to understand. Why? Because whenever you start any block, suppose I am starting int main, after that you just press tab button. You have a tab button on the left side, you press tab button. Okay, so similarly you have to press this tab button, it should be see out, right? So now this is very easy to understand that your main is starting here and main is ending here. This is inside your for loop. Okay, so whenever you let me tell you again, whenever you write any for loop, after that if you write these brackets, okay, always start after a tab, and then you can write here int a equals to 10. So it will automatically begin the next line from after that space, right? So next line will already begin here, it will not begin here. Okay, so this is called formatting. You have to provide proper formatting of your code, right? So this is the end. We have run the program using terminal, we have run those codes using your IDE, right? And which compiler we use MinGw and GCC compiler. Okay, so when you come to lab, you can do the same steps in Linux, and those who are already in lab, they can do these same steps in Windows, right? Okay, so let us finish here. I hope I have not left anything. Mm, okay, so that's it. Thank you everyone. Let's finish here. Okay, thank you.